What happens when the one person you're supposed to trust to help rebuild your life ends up destroying it? The thought rattled in my mind as I sat in my car. Gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached, rain slammed against the windshield, turning the neon lights of the gym parking lot into blurry streaks of red and blue. I should have driven away. I should have gone home to my husband, cooked dinner, and pretended like everything was fine, but I didn't. Instead I sat there, watching the entrance, waiting for him to walk out, my stepson, my trainer, the boy, no, the man who had somehow become the center of my world. Without either of us realizing it, until it was already too late, this wasn't supposed to happen. None of it. I was 43, married with a quiet, stable life in the suburbs, a reputation to maintain. He was 22, young enough to be my son. Technically, he was my son, not by blood, but by the vows I took when I married his father 5 years ago. So how did we end up here? How did a few gym sessions, shared laughs, and lingering glances turn into something that now threatened to unravel everything? I could still remember the first time I felt the shift. It was a Tuesday evening, just like any other. I had been struggling with my form on the bench press, my arms trembling under the weight. "Here," he said, his voice low and steady as he stepped behind me, his hands hovering just above my elbows. "Let me adjust your grip," he added. It was supposed to be professional, clinical, nothing more. But then his fingers brushed against my skin for a second, and something sharp and electric shot through me, stealing my breath. I told myself I imagined it. I told myself it meant nothing, but the next session, it happened again, and the one after that. Small things, a hand lingering a little too long on my shoulder, a smirk when he caught me watching him demonstrate a lift, the way his eyes, so much like his father's, yet not seemed to see right through me. Like he knew things about me I hadn't even admitted to myself. And then came the texts, innocent at first, workout reminders, motivational quotes, the occasional joke, but then after a glass of wine one night, I sensed something riskier, a joke, flirty even. He didn't respond right away. For 3 long hours I stared at my phone, stomach twisted with regret. What had I done? What if he told his father? What if he thought I was some desperate middle-aged woman craving attention? Then finally, my screen lit up, one word. Careful, not a rejection, not a reprimand, just careful. That was the moment I knew I was in deep trouble. Part of me, the part I'd buried under years of responsibility and routine, wanted to play it safe. But a bigger part of me wanted to see what would happen if I didn't. Now, sitting in the car watching the gym doors, I realized I was about to find out. The door swung open, and there he was, tall, broad-shouldered, gym bag slung over one arm. He didn't see me at first. He never did, not unless I wanted him to. But tonight I rolled down the window tonight. I called his name, and when he turned, his face shifted from surprise to something darker, something hungry. I knew there was no going back now. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal. And it was only the beginning. My name is Diane Carter, at least. That's the name I've had for the last 5 years since I married Robert. Before that I was Diane Whitmore, a divorced single mother, trying to piece together a life that hadn't gone the way I'd planned. I grew up in a small Ohio town, where people married young, stayed close to home, and measured success by the stability of their routines. My parents were good, hard-working, church-going people, the kind who believed loyalty was everything. I inherited that belief. It's why I stayed in my first marriage far too long. It's why I clung to the idea of family, even when it became clear my husband no longer believed in it. When I finally left him, I was 35, with a 9-year-old daughter, and a hollow sense of self. I had spent so many years being someone's wife, someone's mother, that I forgot who I was outside of those roles. Then I met Robert. He was everything my ex wasn't: steady, attentive, calm, a financial advisor, with a dry sense of humor. He made me feel safe. For the first time in years, he was also a widower, raising a teenage son on his own. I understood grief. I understood rebuilding. So when he asked me to marry him after 2 years of dating, I didn't hesitate. Blending our families wasn't easy. My daughter Emily was 14 by then, and less than thrilled about sharing her life with a new stepfather and a 16-year-old stepbrother she barely knew, but we made it work, or at least I thought we did. Then Emily left for college, and suddenly the house felt too big, too quiet. Robert buried himself in work, and me. Well, I realized I'd spent so much time taking care of everyone else that I'd forgotten to take care of myself. That's when I joined the gym. It was supposed to be a small thing, just a way to fill the hours, to feel stronger, to take back some control over a body that no longer felt like mine. I hadn't expected him to be the one to train me, Lucas, Robert's son. The boy I'd watched grow from a lanky, sullen teenager into a confident, broad-shouldered man. He'd gotten his personal training certification while in college, and when he recognized me during one of my half-hearted attempts on the elliptical, he offered to help. "You're looking good, Diane," he said that first day, flashing a grin so much like his father's it made my chest ache. "But I could make you look even better." It was a joke, a stupid, harmless joke, but it was also the first time in years anyone had looked at me like I was something more than a wife, a stepmother, a habit. I should have said no. I would have said no if I'd known where it would lead, but I didn't, so I said yes. And that was the moment everything began to unravel. The gym was nearly empty that night. Most people had gone home to their families, their dinners, their normal lives, but I stayed, and so did he. Lucas had suggested an extra session, something more focused. He called it. His voice had been casual over the phone, but there was something underneath it, something that made my pulse race in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. "You're getting stronger," he said as I finished my last set of squats, his eyes following my every movement with an intensity that had nothing to do with form. "But you're still holding back." I laughed, breathless, wiping the sweat from my forehead. "I'm 43, Lucas. Holding back is what keeps me from throwing out my back." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the clean, sharp scent of his cologne, mixed with the salt of his skin. "That's not what I mean," he murmured. "You're afraid to push yourself, afraid of what you might be capable of." His words hit me like a physical touch. Because he was right, I was afraid, but not of the weights, not of the burn in my muscles. I was afraid of this, the way my body reacted when he looked at me like that, the way my thoughts strayed into dangerous places during our sessions, wondering what it would feel like if his hands weren't just correcting my posture. "You're not breathing," he said, his voice low. "You're tensing up. That's why you're not seeing the results you want." I swallowed hard. "And how do you suggest I fix that?" His lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "Let go." 2 words, that was all it took. Something inside me snapped. Before I knew it, my hands were fisted in his shirt, dragging him against me. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I didn't let myself consider the consequences, the morality, or the betrayal of what I was doing. I just kissed him, and God help me, he kissed me back. It wasn't sweet, it wasn't gentle, it was desperate, hungry, the kind of kiss that felt like it was years in the making, like it had to happen, like it couldn't be stopped. His arms pulled me to him, and for one terrifying, exhilarating moment, I forgot everything, my marriage, my age, the fact that this was wrong in every possible way. Then reality came crashing back. I jerked away, my breath ragged, my entire body trembling. "We can't," I whispered. "We just did." He interrupted, his voice rough. I stared at him, at the flush high on his cheekbones, at the dark intensity in his eyes, and I felt something inside me break. Because I wanted him, and worse, I knew I was going to do this again. For 3 days after the kiss, I didn't go to the gym. I told myself it was because I was busy, because I had a headache, because I needed time to think. But the truth, I was terrified of what I'd done, terrified of what I wanted to do again, and most of all terrified that Robert would look at me one day, and just know, he'd see the guilt festering beneath my skin like something rotten. But life doesn't wait for you to be ready. On the 4th day, Lucas texted me, "You're avoiding me." Simple, direct, no question mark, like he already knew the answer. My fingers hovered over the screen, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I should have ignored it. I should have blocked his number. I should have done 100 things that weren't typing back. "I'm not avoiding you. I've just been busy." Lie. His reply came instantly. "Liar." And then before I could respond, another message. "Meet me at the park tomorrow, 7 a.m. Just to talk." I should have said no, but I didn't. The park was empty at that hour, the air still crisp, with the remnants of dawn. I spotted him immediately, leaning against a picnic table, his broad shoulders outlined by the pale morning light. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then quietly, he said, "You kissed me." Flinch. "I know." Do you regret it? The question hung between us. Thick and suffocating, I opened my mouth to say yes. The word didn't come out. Instead, what came out was I don't know. His eyes darkened. That's not good enough. I didn't know what to say. What did he want me to say? I stared at him, trying to find the right words, and then in a rush, they spilled out, raw and unfiltered. That I've spent the last 3 days replaying it in my head, that I can't sleep, because every time I close my eyes, I feel your hands on me. I choked back a sob, voice cracking, that I'm so ashamed of myself, I can barely look at your father. He didn't look away. But you still came here, he said, his voice low. Because I'm weak. I whispered, because you want this, he corrected. I couldn't deny it, and that right there was the worst part. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. I started training with Lucas again, but now, every session was laced with tension, so thick it was a miracle no one else noticed. The way his fingers lingered when he adjusted my stance, the way his gaze dropped to my mouth when I was too out of breath to speak, the way he'd murmur, "Good girl," after a particularly hard set. His voice low enough that only I could hear. It was a game, a dangerous, intoxicating game, and I was losing. Then came the night. Robert was out of town. A business trip, 2 days. Just enough time for the thoughts I'd been fighting to take root. Lucas texted me at 9 p.m. Come over too. Words. That was all it took. I told myself I wouldn't do anything, that I'd just talk to him, finally set boundaries, finally end this, before it went too far. But the moment I stepped into his apartment, the moment his hands were on me, his mouth hot against mine, the plan shattered, this time. There was no going back. The sound of a key turning in the front door froze us mid-kiss. Lucas and I sprang apart like guilty teenagers. My heart slammed against my ribs, hard enough to bruise. The clock on his nightstand read 1:17 a.m. Hours had passed. Hours longer than I expected, and Robert was supposed to be gone for at least another day. But then the front door creaked open, followed by Robert's weary voice, calling out, "Lucas, you awake?" My husband was home. In the apartment where I stood, with our son's lips still burning against mine, for 3 paralyzing seconds, I stopped breathing entirely, then survival instinct kicked in. I grabbed my purse with trembling hands. As Lucas hissed, "Bathroom, now!" I barely made it inside, before Robert's footsteps reached the hallway, pressing my back against the cold tile wall. I clutched my phone like a lifeline. The glow of the screen illuminated my terrified face in the darkness. A single text from Lucas blinked up at me, "Play sick. Say you came to check on me." The lie formed easily, too easily. That's what horrified me most. Diane, Robert's voice called through the door, sending a jolt of electric fear down my spine. "What are you doing here?" I flushed the toilet for cover, willing my voice steady. As I opened the door, Lucas texted that he wasn't feeling well. I brought him soup. The excuse sounded pathetic, even to my ears. The empty soup container sat conspicuously on the coffee table where Lucas and I had been tangled together. Just minutes earlier, Robert looked between us, his tired eyes narrowing slightly. Something in his expression, a flicker of awareness, made my stomach drop. At 1 a.m. Lucas cleared his throat. She was already out. Book club ran late. The silence that followed was the most excruciating of my life. Robert's gaze lingered on my smudged lipstick, then drifted to Lucas's rumpled shirt, the same shirt my fingers had been clutching in desperation, just moments before. When his eyes finally met mine, I saw the exact moment. Suspicion crystallized into something far worse. The word landed like a hammer. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. Robert lunged at Lucas first. Lucas staggered, but didn't retaliate. "You goddamn piece of..." Robert's voice broke as he whirled on me. "How long?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I opened my mouth, but no sound came in. What could I say? That it had started with lingering touches at the gym, with stolen glances across the dinner table, with 1,000 small betrayals. Neither of us had the courage to stop. Robert answered his own question with a shattered laugh. "Christ, it's written all over your faces." The truth, once unleashed, couldn't be taken back. Lucas finally spoke, his voice frighteningly composed. "It's not her fault." "Shut up," Robert roared, shoving him against the wall. "You don't get to protect her, not after this." I had never seen my husband like this. His entire body was shaking with rage and grief, tears cutting tracks down his face. This wasn't just anger. This was the destruction of everything we'd built together. And I had done this, Robert, please. I whispered, reaching for him. He recoiled like I'd burned him. Don't. Just don't. The finality in his voice told me everything. Our marriage was over. The aftermath, 48 hours later. Emily's call came at dawn. Mom, my daughter's voice was ice. Dad just told me, how could you? The condemnation in those 3 words shattered what little composure I had left. It's not that simple. He's my brother, Mom. The raw hurt in her scream tore through me. Or did you forget that? The crude word, so foreign, coming from my polite, straight daughter, drove home the reality more sharply than any lawyer's letter could. I'd lost more than my marriage that night. I'd lost my family. The divorce papers arrived exactly 17 days after Robert walked out of Lucas's apartment. That night, I sat at our kitchen table, staring at the thick envelope bearing my lawyer's name. Robert hadn't fought me on anything, not the house, not the savings, not even the friends we'd shared for years. It was as if he couldn't bear to tether himself to me for 1 second longer than necessary. The only thing he'd written by hand on the paperwork was a single line. Under reason for dissolution of marriage, irreconcilable betrayal, 2 words. That cost me half my life. Small towns have long memories and sharp teeth. By the time the ink dried on the divorce papers, everyone knew. The gym canceled my membership. For the comfort of other patrons, my book club took a hiatus. Even the cashier at the grocery store, the one who had known me for a decade, avoided eye contact as she rang up my wine and frozen dinners. But the worst part, Emily, my daughter, changed her phone number, her email, even her dorm address. When the whispers followed her back to campus, the last time I saw her, she stared at me with her father's eyes, full of disgust so deep it turned my blood to ice. You were supposed to be the parent, she said, not the clergy. That was the day I started drinking before noon. Lucas disappeared after the confrontation. No text, no calls, not even a social media post to confirm he was still alive, the only proof I had. He hadn't vanished entirely were the occasional rumors that he'd moved to another state, that he'd dropped out of school, that he'd been seen at a bar downtown with a girl who looked an awful like me, to make my stomach twit. I told myself I didn't care. Delighted, 3 months after the divorce, I dreamed about Lucas, not the way you'd expect, not entangled sheets, or whispered promises. Just him standing in the doorway of the gym, watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. When I woke up, my cheeks were wet. That was the night I almost dialed his number. My finger hovered over the call button for a full minute before I threw my phone across the room, hard enough to crack the screen. What would I even say? Was I just a game to you? Did you ever feel guilty? Do you hate me as much as I hate myself? The answers wouldn't change anything. The email arrived on a Tuesday. Robert was engaged, not just dating, engaged to a woman from his, someone kind. The wedding was set for spring. Emily was going to be the maid of honor. I read the message 5 times before the words blurred. Then I did what I'd been avoiding for months. I drove to Lucas's apartment. He opened the door on the first knock, as if he'd been expecting me. The sight of him hit me like a punch to the throat. Same sharp jawline, same confident stance, but with shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. We stared at each other for a long silent moment. Then quietly, he said, "You look like hell." I laughed. It was a broken, ugly sound. "Yeah, well, you too." Another pause. "Why are you here, Diane?" The question hung between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. I opened my mouth to answer, and realized I had no one. Lucas didn't invite me in. We stood on opposite sides of his doorway, the space between us charged with everything left unsaid. The apartment behind him looked different. Bare walls, half-packed boxes, a duffel bag slapped by the couch like a corpse. "You're leaving?" I asked. It wasn't a question. He nodded, jaw tight. "Got a job offer. When? Tomorrow." A beat of silence. "You didn't tell me." His laugh was hollow. Would it have mattered? The truth sat like a stone in my throat. It wouldn't have. I studied his face. The faint scar above his eyebrow. From childhood. The stubble darkening his jaw. The way his eyes flickered over my shoulder, instead of meeting mine. He looked older, worn down. Was it worth it? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Lucas finally met my gaze. His expression unreadable. "You tell me." I didn't go to Robert's wedding. Instead, I drove to the lake house, where we'd spent our first anniversary, back when the future still felt bright and unbroken. The new owners had painted the shutters blue. A child's bicycle lay toppled in the yard. I sat in my car for an hour, watching the sunlight dance on the water, remembering the way Robert had kissed me on that day, his hands warm and sure around my waist forever. He'd whispered against my lips. I'd believed him. Now I wondered if he ever thought of me, if when he kissed his new wife, he tasted the ghost of my betrayal. The voicemail came 6 months later. Emily's voice, stiff but clear. I'm getting married. If you want to come, you can. I played it 14 times. Then I did something I hadn't done since the divorce. I prayed not to God, but to the universe, to whatever force might still take mercy on me. Let her forgive me, let me deserve it. She looked radiant, standing at the back of the church. I watched my daughter exchange vows with a man who gazed at her like she hung the moon. Robert stood beside her, his new wife's hand resting proudly on his arm. No one spoke to me, but when Emily tossed her bouquet, she turned just for a second and met my eyes. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't hate either. Dear Lucas, I saw your engagement photo in the alumni magazine. She's beautiful. You look happy. I wonder if you ever think about me, if when you're lying in bed beside her, your mind ever wanders to the mistakes we made. If you regret it as much as I do. Mostly, I wonder if you've forgiven yourself, because I still haven't. The therapist's office was sunlit and sterile. Do you think you've grown from this experience? She asked. I smiled. The practiced, polished one, earned and perfected, for grocery store clerks and old acquaintances. But the truth, some sins don't make you whiter, they just make you lonelier. If you take nothing else from my story, remember, the line between love and ruin is thinner than you think, and once you cross it, there's no going back.